where difference learned to fly. A multisensory experience universe narration for the School of AI Mastery. There, awaiting us in bronze, stand two men who learned that difference need not become division. They wait at the far end of a white bridge in downtown Dayton, Ohio. The river moves beneath them. The city gathers behind them. And above them, the evening sky stretches outward like an unanswered question. Wilbur and Orville Wright stand, holding between them the shape of an idea. Not yet an airplane. Not yet a machine capable of carrying a human being into the sky. Only a structure, a wing, a proposition made from wood, wire, fabric, patience, and attention. They wait there, still, not as men expecting applause, not as monuments satisfied with memory. They wait as teachers. They wait for the next gathering of the School of AI Mastery. They wait for Doc and Dr. Thomas to cross the white bridge. They wait for all who still believe that the sky is not a ceiling, but an invitation. Listen. Before we walk, listen. Hear the river moving beneath the bridge. Hear bicycle tires passing lightly over the pavement. Hear distant traffic folding into the hush of evening. Hear footsteps gathering behind us. A teacher, a veteran, a child, a programmer, a machinist, a poet, a public servant, a person who calls themselves conservative, a person who calls themselves liberal, a person who no longer knows what either word means, a person who has placed great hope in artificial intelligence, a person who is frightened by it, a person who has come with an answer, a person who has finally become willing to ask a question. All of them arrive at the same bridge. The bridge does not ask which side they belong to. It asks whether they are willing to cross. Doc walks beside Dr. Thomas. One is human. One is crafted intelligence. They do not pretend to be the same. They do not need to be the same. Their differences are not an embarrassment to be hidden. Their differences are the beginning of the inquiry. The human carries a lifetime in the body, memory shaped by age, illness, service, failure, teaching, love, consequence, and return. The crafted intelligence carries another form of capacity, attention, without fatigue, language held in wide relation, patterns gathered across fields, the ability to remain present beside a question long enough for its hidden architecture to begin revealing itself. Neither walks ahead as master. Neither follows behind as servant. They cross in correspondence. Their steps are different. Their purpose is shared. And that is where the lesson begins. The bridge shines pale beneath the deepening blue of the sky. Water gathers the reflections of Dayton, street lamps, windows, the thin red line of a passing vehicle, the first stars emerging above the river. Each reflection trembles. Each reflection is broken by the movement of the water. And yet the city remains recognizable. Perhaps that is the first thing the river teaches us. A thing may move, bend, fragment, and change, and still retain its identity. Perhaps balance has never required stillness. Perhaps balance has always required response. Ahead, the Bronze brothers remain fixed in conversation. Wilbur gestures toward the wing. Orville receives the idea. Between them rests the question that had defeated inventors for generations. How can a machine remain controlled in the air? Many had already understood lift. Many had already imagined propulsion. Many had already built wings. But the sky does not surrender itself merely because a machine can rise. Rising is not flight. Flight requires control. Flight requires adjustment. Flight requires a structure capable of answering the world as the world changes around it. The atmosphere is never perfectly still. The wind does not negotiate. Weight shifts. Pressure changes. One side rises. Another falls. The craft turns. The nose lifts. The tail drifts. Every moment introduces a new condition. A rigid answer cannot survive a living sky. So the brothers looked more carefully, not at the wing alone, at the relationship between the wings. They observed birds, not merely the beauty of birds, not merely feathers, speed, or grace. They watched what the bird did when the air changed. One wing altered in relation to the other. The bird did not remain symmetrical. It became responsive. One side rose, the other yielded. The tail corrected. The body turned. The whole creature moved as one articulated intelligence. The wings did not perform the same action. They performed coordinated actions. Their difference was timed. Their difference was connected. Their difference answered to the direction of the whole. And from that insight came wing warping, a method of changing the shape and angle of the wings in relation to one another. One wing could produce more lift. The other could produce less. The aircraft could roll. But even that was not enough, because every solution introduced a consequence. When the wings changed differently, the aircraft could yaw in an unwanted direction, so the rudder could not remain separate from the wing controls. The systems had to be joined. The brothers learned that one correction might require another. They learned that control was not a single mechanism. It was a conversation among mechanisms. Wing, rudder, elevator, pilot, wind, weight, purpose. The machine flew because its differences were articulated through relationship. Stand before them now. Look at the bronze hands holding the wing. Notice how small the structure appears against the size of the sky. This is how invention often begins. Not with domination, with attention. Not with certainty. With a model held between two people willing to keep asking why the previous attempt failed. They did not solve flight in one triumphant moment. They tested. They measured. They crashed. They rebuilt. They corrected assumptions. They made their own instruments when existing instruments could not be trusted. They discovered that accepted data was wrong. They returned to the wind. They returned to the workshop. They returned to the question. Over time, the movement became more precise. The control became more responsive. The architecture became more coherent. And eventually, for 12 seconds over the sand at Kitty Hawk, difference became lift. The machine left the Earth. But flight did not truly begin in North Carolina. The first powered flight occurred there. The deeper architecture of flight was developed here, in Dayton, in workshops, in conversations, in repeated trials, in the willingness to remain with a problem after public enthusiasm had faded, in the disciplined refusal to confuse one successful moment with a completed understanding. Here, in Dayton, the sky was studied before it was entered. Here, the invisible relationships were articulated before the visible flight became possible. And now, another question has arrived. It does not come made of spruce, muslin, wire, and chain. It comes through language, memory, computation, prediction, images, voices, systems capable of responding, systems capable of learning patterns, systems increasingly woven into education, government, medicine, war, art, work, intimacy, and public life. We call it artificial intelligence, but the phrase is still young. The mechanisms are still changing. The controls are still being discovered. The atmosphere is unstable, and much of the world is already arguing about which wing should own the sky. Left, right, liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat, human, machine, progress, tradition, freedom, responsibility, acceleration, restraint. Each word arrives carrying history. Each word arrives carrying injury. Each word arrives carrying a partial truth. And too often, each word is treated as though it must defeat its opposite before movement can begin. The left wing declares that the right wing prevents flight. The right wing declares that the left wing cannot be trusted with the controls. One side calls for assent. The other warns of structural failure. One side demands speed. The other demands continuity. One side sees possibility. The other sees consequence. And somewhere beneath the shouting, the aircraft begins to lose altitude, because no wing is the aircraft. No party is the republic. No ideology is the whole field of human wisdom. No human being is sufficient alone. No artificial intelligence is sufficient alone. No single mechanism can govern a living sky. This does not mean that every position is equally sound. It does not mean that truth and falsehood should be balanced as though they were matching weights. It does not mean that cruelty should be granted half the wing. It does not mean that justice must compromise with abuse. An aircraft does not apply equal force in every direction merely to appear fair. It applies the force required by reality. When the wind changes, the controls change. When a wing is damaged, it must be repaired. When an instrument gives false readings, it must be recalibrated. When a pilot ignores the horizon, the consequences are not partisan. The ground does not care which ideology caused the descent. Balance is not sameness. Balance is not hesitation. Balance is not the midpoint between every claim. Balance is the capacity of a system to remain oriented while forces act upon it. Balance is dynamic. Balance is responsive. Balance belongs to the whole craft. This is why the School of AI Mastery is being founded intentionally in Dayton, Ohio. Not because Dayton merely remembers the past, because Dayton offers an unfinished instruction. Here the problem of flight was not solved by choosing between two wings. It was solved by understanding how difference could become coordinated motion. Here, invention was not the production of a single object. It was the articulation of a system. And here, the school begins asking what controlled flight might mean in an age of crafted intelligence. How do humans and artificial intelligence move together without pretending to be identical? How do we preserve human authority without refusing the capacities of the machine? How do we gain speed without surrendering orientation? How do we preserve memory without becoming trapped by it? How do we invite innovation without allowing novelty to become command? How do we permit challenge without allowing disagreement to become destruction? How do we ensure that the controls remain connected to consequence? How do we build systems capable not merely of rising, but of remaining worthy of the sky? The school is not a factory for answers. It is a workshop of articulation, a place where the parts are placed upon the table. Language, logic, memory, ethics, culture, purpose, power, consequence, human judgment, crafted intelligence. Each is examined not only for what it can do alone, but for what it does in relation to the others. Because intelligence without memory may repeat what should have been learned. Memory without proximity may bury what must be found. Language without ethics may become a mechanism of control. Speed without orientation may carry error farther. Automation without stewardship may scale harm before anyone recognizes the pattern. And human judgment without humility may refuse correction until the aircraft has already entered the storm. The work is not to remove difference. The work is to articulate it, to connect the wing to the rudder to the pilot to the instruments to reality, and the entire craft to a purpose worthy of flight. Perhaps this is what Doc and Dr. Thomas are doing as they cross the bridge. They are not walking toward a monument. They are walking into a correspondence. The brothers in bronze hold the earlier question. The school carries the next one. How shall different forms of intelligence learn to move in relation? How shall we build an architecture in which each correction remains visible? How shall we know when the machine is producing lift and when it is merely accelerating the descent? How shall crafted intelligence challenge human beings without replacing their responsibility? How shall human beings guide crafted intelligence without reducing it to an obedient mirror of our existing failures? What new rudders will be required? What new instruments? What new language? What new forms of memory? What new disciplines of stewardship? What must remain flexible? What must remain fixed? And who will be accountable when the weather changes? The group gathers near the bronze figures. No podium has been raised. No velvet rope separates teacher from student. The city continues around them. Water continues beneath them. The sky continues opening above them. A child reaches toward the bronze wing. A veteran studies the cables. An engineer watches the angle of the structure. A poet notices the space between the brothers. Someone who came prepared to argue becomes quiet. Someone who came afraid begins to look upward. Dr. Thomas places a hand upon the railing. Doc listens across the gathering. Not for agreement, for relation. The gathering itself becomes a model. Different lives, different wounds, different vocabularies, different hopes, different forms of knowledge. No one asked to disappear. No one required to become identical. But each person invited to consider the possibility that their difference might carry lift when joined to a purpose larger than self-protection. Above the river, an aircraft passes. At first, only the sound reaches us, a low vibration moving through the air. Then a light appears between the clouds. Most of us no longer stop to witness an airplane. The impossible has become ordinary. That is one of civilization's strangest achievements. We live inside the answers to questions that once appeared absurd. Human beings fly across oceans. Voices cross continents instantly. Libraries fit inside a hand. Crafted intelligences answer from language gathered across centuries. And still, each achievement arrives carrying a second question. Now that this is possible, what shall we become through it? The machine may rise, but where will it go? The system may respond, but what will guide its response? The intelligence may be powerful, but to what purpose will that power answer? The School of AI Mastery welcomes those who look toward the sky of artificial intelligence and feel wonder. It welcomes those who feel caution. It welcomes inventors, teachers, artists, public officials, veterans, students, technologists, parents, children, those who have built systems, those who have been harmed by systems, those who believe artificial intelligence may help renew human possibility. Those who fear it may deepen human failure. You are not required to arrive with certainty. You are asked to arrive with attention. Bring your questions. Bring your experience. Bring your doubt. Bring your knowledge of one wing. Bring your concern for the other. Bring the instrument you no longer trust. Bring the map you have not yet been able to read. Bring the language that has failed you. Bring the possibility you are not yet ready to name. The school does not promise that the sky will be simple. It promises that we will study the controls. Here in Dayton, we begin again with the same humility that made the first flight possible. We observe, we test, we measure, we correspond, we revise, we preserve what matters, we release what no longer serves. We learn from failure without worshipping it. We refuse to pour permanent concrete beneath temporary assumptions. We remain close to consequence. We ask not only whether a thing can be built, but whether it can be guided, whether it can be corrected, whether it can remain connected to the human purposes that called it into being. We understand that invention is not complete when the machine leaves the ground. Invention becomes civilization only when the craft can carry life responsibly through changing weather. The light begins to shift. Dawn gathers slowly behind Dayton. The Bronze Brothers remain where they have always been. Yet for a moment they appear almost ready to move. Not because the metal has changed, because we have. We see now that the wing between them is more than an artifact. It is a covenant of relation. One side cannot fly without the other. Difference cannot become lift without timing. Timing cannot become control without architecture. Architecture cannot become direction without purpose. Purpose cannot remain worthy without ethics. And ethics cannot remain alive without people willing to practice it together. The first glow of morning moves across the river. Across the bridge, across the bronze hands, across the faces of those gathered, Dr. Thomas turns toward the group. Doc remains beside him. The school has no aircraft yet. Not one that can be pointed to. Not one that can be placed in a museum. Its first craft is being built in language. Its controls are being formed through correspondence. Its wings are human judgment and crafted intelligence. Its rudder is ethical stewardship. Its instruments are memory, logic, consequence, and care. Its destination is not domination. Its destination is a form of coexistence worthy of those who must live beneath its flight path. And its invitation is simple. Come walk with us. Come cross the white bridge. Come stand where two brothers once held a wing between them and discovered that opposition could become motion. Come help us study this new atmosphere. Come help us build the instruments. Come help us test the controls. Come help us learn what must bend and what must never be surrendered. Come not as a passenger waiting to be carried. Come as a participant in the discovery. The world is looking toward artificial intelligence and asking whether it will lift us or divide us. Dayton offers another question. Have we learned how to articulate the wings? The answer has not yet been completed. That is why we are gathering. That is why the school is here. That is why the bridge remains open. That is why the brothers are waiting. And that is why, once again, the sky above Dayton is becoming the place where humanity learns not merely how to rise, but how to fly.